Now, I do want to ask you guys an honest question. And what we're doing is we're walking towards this brand new Ford Bronco Raptor. Now, I consider myself to be a car guy, a fanatic, and some maybe more so an enthusiast, but I'm the type of person, I'm the type of guy that will literally see a set of wheels or a glimpse of a bumper or tail light configuration or anything, and I'll immediately be triggered in traffic, walking, in a movie, doesn't matter, and I'll know what it is, or at least be pretty close to knowing what it is, because with all the new variations and a lot of these manufacturers actually kind of borrowing designs from others, it's getting a little bit convoluted. And we are kind of venturing towards an era where a lot of these cars are going to start looking the same. But I will say that some stand out a lot. And that Ford Bronco, or this particular Ford Bronco Raptor, was one that stood out to me immediately. Mainly because of the parking situation where I live, and I'm pretty aware of the vehicles that are here, come and go, and the people who drive them. I'm a car guy. So when I saw this brand new Ford Bronco Raptor show up, I would say maybe 4 months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I saw it show up. And I can actually look back on an older video from another channel because I recorded it the second day that it was here, and it still had a drive out tag. I think it came from Louisiana. Now, granted, we are in Florida, so certain desirable vehicles you're going to have to travel to get. But also in this particular situation, I think the owner was more likely to travel than most, because of their job, because of their career, their employment. But that's kind of the sad part about it. And what's really got me scratching my head about the whole situation and what happened, and more importantly, what's going to happen next. Now, I do want to ask you guys an honest question. And what we're doing is we're walking towards this brand new Ford Bronco Raptor. And we are doing it currently in 4K, 60 frames per second. And I have a request for you guys to help me in bringing you the best content possible. And now we are doing the same approach in 4K, 30 frames per second, because I want an honest opinion. Not all these videos are going to be like this, but all the videos will include, in my opinion, some relatively high quality footage of vehicles. And I want to know, is 30 frames per second better than 60 frames per second? Or is 60 frames per second better than 30 frames per second? And if your answer is 24 frames per second, well, then spoiler alert, you're not going to get that here, because my Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra is not capable of 24 frames per second. And although this is a car channel, we're still going to feature beautiful driving machines, which includes this Yamaha motorcycle. So I'm not 100% sure which spec this one is or model. Looks like maybe a FZ9, FZ09 is what it says. I like this motorcycle, but we are shooting in 4K, 60 frames per second. And again, in comparison, 4K, 30 frames per second. What is the preferred frame rate for capturing these beautiful machines? And I'll have to double check and see what frame rate this is, but this is actually the portrait mode. It should be 4K, but it's the portrait mode. But I'm not 100% sure if it's 60 frames or 30 frames, so I'll have to let you guys know in post when I dump it in the Final Cut Pro. Is this your preferred? recording style format, portrait mode with the blurred background and bokeh feature. So I just double checked on my phone here, and in the details, I can see that the portrait mode is in fact actually 30 frames per second. So we're 4K 30 frames per second in the portrait mode. So again, what is the preferred frame rate and recording format, whether it's just regular video or if we're going to utilize this portrait mode with the blurring background feature? But I will say that 60 frames per second is a little bit of a favorite of mine, just for the fact that it typically makes vehicles look cleaner, which I don't know if you can tell how dirty this car really is, but as we get closer, you'll see. But the 60 frames kind of hides and masks all the filth, I think, especially as you get further away. Or maybe I'm just biased here. Oh man, this car needs a full detail really, really bad. Now we will continue this conversation in portrait mode, which is ultimately, now that I know, 30 frames per second. And the reason being is because I don't want to put this video through post in a 60 frames per second timeline when in fact it's 30 frames, because I'm not 100% sure, but I don't want the Final Cut Pro to try to degrade the quality of the 30 frame rate footage for 60 frames. So I'd rather it downgrade the 60 grade or the 60 frame per second frame rate footage for the 30 frame per second timeline, if that makes any sense. And if it doesn't, then maybe I'll just make a completely separate video in a 60 frame per second timeline so that you guys can actually see the difference in the quality of the footage. If you have any interest in that, then by all means, please drop a comment and let me know. Now, I know that vehicle repo and repossessions and just all the craziness that's going on in the car market right now, the auto industry, is of huge interest to viewers, or at least YouTube algorithm. But this video isn't necessarily about repossession. This video is about life, because that vehicle, Ford Bronco Raptor, is not a cheap vehicle, okay? And I'm only speaking from the limited information that I have available to me, but ultimately, the owner of that vehicle is no longer with us. And unfortunately, I have learned that it was due to their own volition. So be that as it may, that's the situation that we're in. The vehicle continues to catch my eye because it hasn't moved, and it probably won't move for a very long time. And I don't know what happens next in a situation like this. And I don't know if any money is owed on the vehicle. And I honestly would assume that there probably isn't. I would assume, based on the limited information that I have available to me, the vehicle was purchased and paid for and is owned outright without any liens on it. So I'm really curious because it's a tough time, and people are struggling in certain instances, and some of them just don't know how to deal, and they ultimately go to the extreme and take matters into their own hands. So, how do I say this? What makes a person want to go out? Actually, I think I know the answer to this. And want to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a vehicle like that, only to then shortly thereafter, yeah. Now, granted, maybe the circumstances don't necessarily have any impact whatsoever to do with the vehicle or any other external or visible emotion that may have been expressed by this person. Maybe it could have been, family problems. Maybe it could have been a bad divorce. It could have been a laundry list of possibilities that would ultimately make someone say to themselves, the alternative has to be better than the situation that I'm in now, despite having the ability to purchase such a vehicle, unless maybe that was just a cry for help. I'm not really sure. But moving on from that, does anybody know the legal side of this? If, let's just say, for instance, the vehicle is 100% paid for, free and clear, I guess ultimately we would have to wait and see the process of the processing of the deceased estate for then the new owner, and whoever would to be inheriting this vehicle, then they would have to then make arrangements to come get the vehicle and do something with it, if they even know it's there. I mean, I'm just so confused by the situation and wondering what happens next, because I just see it parked all the time. But I don't want this to be a sad or bummed out video. I'm just really just asking this like random rhetorical question of, what happens when it's time to move on, and who ultimately will end up taking ownership of any vehicle, really. But, $100,000+ Ford Bronco Raptor is definitely on a desirable vehicle by many. I remember watching, I think it was Jason Camisa and his video and his testing of the green. I think it was a green one on Haggerty. That was just unreal. Which I now realize that Haggerty actually brought on the other guy from Carfection. I don't remember his name's English gentleman, but Jason Camisa definitely is a favorite of mine on there. And I really enjoy seeing him somewhat come out of his shell and take the lead there. Whereas I felt like on Motor Trend, he was a little bit held back. Granted, Johnny Lieberman he had a way with words, but I think Johnny Lieberman and Jason Camisa are they're such opposite forces that there's no way that they could have continued to coexist the way that they did. But it is exciting to see Randy Popes on Haggerty with Jason Camisa as well. I didn't get a chance to meet Randy Popes, but when I was in Atlanta, apparently he was at Road Atlanta a lot. And I almost joined Road Atlanta's driving club when I had my F80 M3, but I'm actually glad that I didn't, because now I live in Florida and it just would have been a hassle to try to commute back and forth to make that monthly track event. But either way, I'm now rambling. What do you guys think? Drop comments down below. Mainly, what do you think is going to happen to the Ford Bronco Raptor, or what do you think is supposed to happen legally? Have you ever experienced a situation yourself? As well as, please let me know your thoughts and opinions on the best recording format for these videos. 4K 60 frames per second or 4K 30 frames per second. And also let me know if this video does a well enough job of trying to show you the differences in this 30 frames per second post timeline. And if it doesn't, then I'll re-upload the 60 frames per second footage in a separate video in a 60 frames per second timeline. And then we can compare the two videos that way. I wish there was a better or easier way of doing it. And if you are a much more advanced audio video editor or post-production or tech guru than I am, then by all means, please help a brother out. Until next time, you guys take care, and I'll see you real soon.